Hi, I'm Shelley Easthope. I was part of the Conservancy in its very beginnings. And it was actually, some people seem to think it was started for Medicine Beach, but it was actually started before we even got the concept of protecting Medicine Beach. And it was started just because a lot of places on Pender were being logged and people were becoming very concerned. Shortly after the Conservancy was started, this beautiful spot was offered to the trustees of the Island Trust by the owners. But the idea was they would give us the marshland, and in return, they would get to subdivide the upper portion. And the trustees under the bylaws couldn't do that. So they turned to Carl Hampson and I to ask us if we would have a conversation with those people. After a conversation, we had the whole land assessed, and the assessor said, well, why don't you just buy the whole thing? And so Carl and I looked at each other, and Carl was the president of the Conservancy at the time, and we said, yeah, why don't we? So he put it to the meeting, and the decision was made that yes, the Conservancy wanted to go ahead with fundraising and purchasing this whole big parcel. The challenge was no one knew how to go about this. And so for that whole summer, myself and Lynn Wells sold t-shirts at the market and tried to raise awareness and keep the enthusiasm going so that the project could go ahead. And in the fall, it started, and everyone knows, how that all transpired. After the fundraising committee finished the fundraising program, we basically all just handed over management of the land because we were all exhausted. But we handed it over saying, we hope that it will all be protected. We don't want to see paths or it made into a park. We wanted to see it just preserved as a conservancy. And so when the path was put up here, some of us were very shocked because that hadn't been our vision. And I'm hoping that we'll minimize the amount of public access, because all the public access, erodes what we have here. And it really is meant as conservancy land, not as parkland. There's a difference. But one of the reasons I was really willing to put a lot of time and energy into conserving it was I knew how valuable the marshland was. I've always lived, I've lived most of my life on the coast, and most of that time near marshland, so I know how much wealth of biodiversity there is in marshland. And I also knew that most of those marshes got made into marinas. I could just see what would happen here. This would all be dredged out and made into a marina. It would be a great marina, but we'd lose what's here. So that's why I was quite passionate about protecting it, and very, very, very happy that I did.
I'm Carl Hampson. I was involved in the early days of the Pender Island Conservancy, but I guess what our first real project was, I was asked by Islands Trust at the time, that's Bob Allison, on behalf of a family called the Atkins, who owned the 20-odd acres at Medicine Beach. And the Atkins family, especially Ann Atkins, was very determined to make sure that the marsh, the brackish marsh just inland from the beach, was set aside and preserved. So I organized another one of my walks, and we met at Medicine Beach, and I took the gang of about 35 of us, I guess, up to kind of up on the bluff there. Like there's stairs and railings and things there now, but there was nothing then. And I announced that we are going to try and buy the whole property. And the whole island got involved in it. It was really quite wonderful. And we had a massive party to celebrate. I think about 700 people showed up. all in all over the course of the evening, and we raised $18,000 that night to go towards the purchase of Medicine Beach. And we had subsequent events there for Brooks Point, the community hall. There's probably altogether 4 or so these big dances we put on. So I've always been a supporter, and I'm really glad to see it as active as it is now.
Hi, I'm Erin O'Brien. I'm the Ecology and Development Director with the Pender Conservancy. So over the past year, I've been able to work with all of the landholders that have covenanted their land. This includes annual monitoring as well as needed land stewardship activities like invasive species removal. 2024 was also a really exciting year for new land protections. So first, I was really privileged to work with 2 generous donor families under the Federal Ecological Gifts Program in establishing the Mosswood Nature Reserve and Forest Wetland Nature Reserve. This is 20 acres of protected, really diverse coastal bluff ecosystems, rocky seeps, north-facing mossy lush forests, and skunk cabbage wetlands. And these are all habitats that support a really diverse collection of species, plants and animals. And they also establish really critical climate refugia. So they buffer extreme temperatures and drought conditions, and that's really important for a lot of species, especially in the face of climate change. Also in 2024, we were able to purchase an additional 46 acres, or just over 18 hectares, of land under the Old Growth Nature Fund. And with the generous support of some very dedicated community individual donors, this funding allowed us to establish the Vulture Ridge and Osprey Ridge nature reserves. Because these properties supported a relatively high density of large, old, veteran, or legacy trees, and they also have the beginnings of old growth forest structure. So in total, from 2021 to 2024, this has allowed us to secure 125 acres or 50 hectares of newly protected land on Pender. And these 2024 donations and purchases also checked another box for us, that of landscape connectivity. So we would love to be able to protect every piece of undeveloped land on Pender, but land costs combined with limited resources means we have to be strategic about what parcels we prioritize for protection. Especially on Pender Island, compared to other Southern Gulf Islands, we're really fragmented and really subdivided, so there's not a lot of contiguous land left to protect. So as well as the inherent ecological value of a parcel, we also have to think about how its protection will allow us to create a larger protected area by stitching together national parks and community parks and private conservation covenants and our own private nature sanctuaries to create protected and connected lands across the island. So the primary role of a land trust like the Conservancy is the permanent protection of land, prioritizing ecological integrity and diversity and wildlife habitat. Unlike publicly owned parks, which are often managed for recreational use and access, we're setting aside land for all of the other species that we share this island with. And where we can help to heal the land if needed, and do low-impact research and monitoring activities to learn about the ecology and diversity of the species that are present there. In a world where it seems there's less and less space for every species other than human, I'm really proud to be a part of this effort by the Pender Conservancy on one island in the Salish Sea in our own backyards to make space for other species and to create more resilient and protected lands.
Hi, I'm Dan Baxter. I run the Nature Center at Hope Bay for the Pender Islands Conservancy. And the idea behind the store was to sell local products by local vendors and to have sustainable clothing like we do over here with the shirts. And of course, make everything we sell at the Nature Center to be made in Canada whenever possible. So, for example, we have many shirts here that are made in Canada and printed on Pender Island. And then we have soaps, and we also have pottery, which is made right here on the island. So basically everything we do here is to try to keep things as local as possible And we've been doing that since 2020. Besides the lots of local products that we sell in the store, we also have an education side to the Nature Center. For example, right now we have a display on for the butterflies of the Gulf Islands. We have that on loan from the BC Museum. We also have some education about the ecosystem that we currently live in, which is the coastal Douglas fir ecosystem, some of the properties we own. So if you have any questions about anything on Pender, whether it's wildlife related, plant related, we can definitely help you out here.
Welcome to Pender Native Plants. My name is Adam Miller. Conservancy hired me in August to open a native plant nursery for them, and here we are. Please come on in. So this is a poly house that we work out of. Most of our production activities happen within here, as well as our retail center up front here, which is delightful in the winter, staying out of the wind and the cold and the rain. Great place to come and shop plants and talk to me about anything you want gardening. Over here we have our misting huts where we do all of our cuttings propagations. So all of these cuttings have been cut and propagated from local materials here on Pender Island. That's really the goal, is to collect seed, cuttings and other plants and produce everything from locally harvested materials. Let's go further back here. Here we have a lot of seeds that we've started, as well as some cuttings that are ready to be potted on. So we've done hundreds and hundreds of cuttings, thousands and thousands of seeds. And as you can see, some of the plants are looking very beautiful right now, ready for sale. Coming out the back here, we have a lot of our seeds outside because oftentimes they need to be cold stratified and need to go through a cold period before they're going to germinate. Over here we have our shade house. So in the summer we need shade for a lot of the plants to reduce our amount of water use, as well as to just keep some of the plants protected from the sun. Yeah, so we are a full production nursery and we're already selling plants that we've grown here on the island. And hopefully by the fall, we're almost all selling plants we've grown here on the island. Anyways, thanks so much for your time. My name is Adam.
Hi, I'm Sarah Labadi, Ecological Technician for Pender Conservancy. This year we embarked on a restoration journey covering 3 categories. First up, the native garden at the community hall is on full display, showcasing the incredible diversity of native plants and shrubs. Next, we're restoring 3 of our treasured nature reserve: flycatcher, kingfisher, and vulture ridge. And thanks to our fantastic partnership with the Pender Island Parks and Recreation Commission, we're also restoring 9 Pender parks for everyone to enjoy. Our main focus has been a battle against invasive plants like Daphne and Scotch broom. Throughout the year, we planted, protected with cages, weeded, mulched, and nurtured a lot of native trees, shrubs, and grass. Our restoration effort extended to disturbed lands, forest, and wetland. As wetlands are an important key for the battle against climate change, we are very proud of our work on Galleon Way and at the wastewater management plan on Schooner Way. Thanks to a mix of workshop, seminar, presentation, and even webinar, we become adept at using techniques like assembled nurse log, mycelial graft, plant propagation, and yellow iris smothering. Our efforts also include keeping a close eye on ecosystem health by removing hours of wildlife camera footage from our nature reserve. Now let's talk numbers. I got a growing list of 130 volunteers email, and we've been fortunate to have the enthusiastic help of 16 UVic students in a wetland restoration effort on Schooner Way in March, and they planted more than 500 native plants in only 5 hours. Plus, we had the energetic participation of 30 Pender school kids who got their hearts pumping by running up and down during the broom bash at George Hill. Every time we roll out an activity, we welcome about 6 awesome volunteers on average, but sometimes the stars align just right, like the unforgettable autumn of 2024, when 15 enthusiastic Penderites pop up at Shingle Bay Park. or also on the memorable gathering of 13 native lovers at Vulture Ridge Nature Reserve who tackled broom and daphne. We keep things buzzing with around 4 activities per month. We're inviting you to be a part of this exciting adventure.